Welcome to Kibbe on Liberty. Hey, Jennifer, how's it going?
Good. Hi, Matt. Nice to hear you. See you, sort of.
So, yeah, you can't see me, but you're probably better off that way. But just so you know, I am sporting all Free the People branded merchandise because we want liberty and people controlling their own lives to be a lifestyle brand.
Nice.
And I feel like at some point I need you to get to review our branding to make sure that we know what we're doing. But you've been a very busy person these last couple of weeks.
I am busy. What's today? Wednesday. So about a week and a half ago, I launched my own brand. So yes, been busy.
And what is that brand?
The brand is called XXXY Athletics, and it is the only brand to stand up for female athletes and the protection of women's sports. Of all the athletic brands out there that claim to champion women, none really seem to be doing that right now in a meaningful way.
I want to totally get into that, but I realized the last couple shows that we did, or I guess I met you about 2 years ago now, when you stood up for children during lockdowns, government lockdowns of schools, and we talked about that, and we talked about your travails at Levi's, and then we talked about sort of corporate culture being captured by DEI and woke politics. But I don't think we've ever really gotten into your history as a champion gymnast and the book and the documentary that you wrote and produced. Yeah. Because I feel like that's part of the context for why you're doing this product rollout.
Yeah, it's a huge part. It's the biggest part. I feel like I'm going back to my roots. The long and short of it is I was an elite gymnast as a child in the 1980s. I was a 1986 national champion and a 7-time national team member. And despite my successes, I suffered enormously due to the abusive training culture, physically, emotionally, and as we now know, because of the conviction of Larry Nassar, rampant sexual abuse as well. And it was kind of just known, and you were supposed to just be quiet. And from a physical and emotional, what I would term abuse standpoint, it was just sort of tough. That's what was called tough coaching. And you just had to kind of shut up and take it. And that's the culture I grew up in. And despite my successes, when I left the sport, I just felt like an utter failure because basically, if you're a child and you're told every day that you're a complete piece of garbage, which is the general approach to coaching in the sport, you end up, guess what, believing that. And so when I left the sport, I just was wrecked emotionally and physically. My body still continues to deteriorate because I trained on a broken ankle for 2 years. So about 2 decades after I left the sport, I wrote a book. It was my first book called Chalked Up, and it was the very first person account to detail the abuses and the kind of commonplace abuse in the training culture. And that was in 2008, and people were not pleased with me for saying the things I said, which were all true. That was my first time being called a grifter and a liar, just out to make a buck. But then 10 years later, Larry Nassar, who was the former quote unquote doctor for Team USA, was convicted for possession of child pornography, I guess is the common parlance. I don't think that's the legal one, and the abuse of hundreds of young athletes over the course of 30 years. And at that point, everybody said, oh, Jen said it first. We always stood with her, which they did not. But we welcome all to the fight. But at that point, essentially, the culture was revealed for what it was. And I was very intent on showing that Nassar wasn't one bad apple, but a product of this really messed up culture. And I made a film called Athlete A, which came out in 2020. I produced it, and won an Emmy for Best Investigative Documentary. And it details the crimes of Nassar, but I think more importantly, connects his crimes to the broader culture of abuse in the sport. And it really started a movement amongst athletes and former athletes to say, to demand change in their sports.
So you were, I wonder if this is a product of the abusive culture or a product of your stubborn perseverance, but you were in a championship competition and you broke your leg, and then you came back a second time until you broke your ankle. What was that? Did you feel like you couldn't quit, or is this the Jennifer Sey that people underestimate because you just won't stop?
Boy, that's a good question, Matt. Yeah, I mean, I broke my femur in very sort of public on the world stage fashion at the World Championships in Montreal in 1985 on my last event, bars, which anyone can watch on YouTube, although I never have. And of course, it was assumed I would never come back. It's a pretty devastating injury, as you can imagine, breaking the largest bone in your body. And I thought I wasn't going to be able to come back, but I did. And 9 months later, I won USA Championships. That's when I became the national champion. It's hard to understand. It's hard for people to understand when you give up your life, a young life, to train in that manner. I mean, I was training. I mean, I made my first national team at 10. I was training 30, 40 hours a week at that age. And, by the time I was 14, it was 40 or 50 hours a week. And you just give up everything. And you won't give up. You've already given up your childhood. You've given up all the normal things that kids do. So to give up on the dream, whatever it is, winning, going to the Olympics, which I did not do, it's unthinkable. And that's what makes me, to tie it back to the brand, and I can come back to this question, but I don't think people understand how hard we work, as young elite level athletes, national team level athletes. And to have that stolen in a totally unfair manner, and to be told as girls or women, stand down, your needs, your wants, your hard work matters less than this biological male who self-identifies as female, therefore gets to compete in the women's category. It's devastating. You give up everything. And so, to come back to how, I just never considered giving up. And when I learned it was my femur and not my knee, the knee is a sort of devastating injury that's hard to come back from. I was so relieved. I was happy. I was like, oh, bones heal. I'll be back in no time. And I had a full leg cast, and I was back in the gym a week later doing the training that I could. I don't know. It was just unthinkable to me to give up. And I am very stubborn, and I am used to being underestimated and then exceeding expectations. And I'm pretty good at comebacks, and I've been doing it since I was 16. So I'm going to do it now.
Yeah, those are great attributes. But I'm thinking about at least one woman that's joined your company as an advocate, Riley Gaines. You can name a lot more women than I can that have a similar story to you, where they gave up everything. They worked, they achieved excellence, and at the last minute, somebody changed the rules, and they're competing with biological males. It sort of mystifies me why it would be controversial to criticize that. Do you have any ideas as to why what you're doing is brave? Because
it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, right?
No, but as you and I both know, we're living in a world in which, truth no longer seems to matter. It's ideology that matters. And, my first run-in, or not my first run-in, but certainly my most kind of mind-blowing for me run-in with this was COVID. And the lie that underpinned, well, there were many lies that underpinned lockdowns and school closures, but one of the primary ones was everyone's at equal risk, which was never true. So, but again, if you question that, you were an evil, horrible person that just wanted, old people to die. You were a eugenicist and an ableist and all of these things. But the facts matter. I hate the phrase "my truth," which became popularized, I think, during, the height of Me Too. And I don't totally understand why it became so popular. Like, if you're saying this happened to me, then say it's the truth, not my truth. It sort of shaves the edges off, which I guess was the point. But I refuse to use that phrase. And it is the truth that male bodies are faster and stronger. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what Maggie Mertens writes in The Atlantic, that this is a fact that has long been questioned by doctors. No, it hasn't. Everybody knows it's true. But because of an ideological position, which is there is no such thing as the sex binary, the lie that we are told we must further is that, there is no difference between male and female bodies, and a human is what they say they are. Well, that's not true. And you're welcome to present however you want. You're welcome to do, and the law should protect you from discrimination. I fully am on board with that, but I will not further the lie that there is no difference between male and female bodies. And I will not sit down and be quiet when I am told that you need to put your needs and fairness and safety aside for what these, trans athletes want. Why do girls and women, why do their needs have to come last? They shouldn't. And so I would just argue, because, we're told it's unkind, it's not compassionate. Where's your compassion for girls and women? We fought a long time to have, access to safe spaces and an even playing field within sports. And we deserve to keep that. Women deserve their sex-based rights, in my opinion. So anyway, to answer your question, I just think it's one of many examples where the powers that be are saying you must further this lie to further an ideology.
Free the People is embarking on our most ambitious project to date to document and expose the lies behind the greatest public health failure in my lifetime. We're talking to insiders with firsthand knowledge of the government's role in funding, creating, and then covering up the COVID-19 virus in our exclusive new documentary series, The Coverup. But I need your help. We won't get to the bottom of this scandal alone, so I'm asking viewers to crowdsource any information that could be helpful to our investigation. If you're watching this, you already know what the government did during lockdowns was unforgivable. Help us get to the truth and prevent it from ever happening again. To get involved, go to freethepeople.org/coverup. That's freethepeople.org/coverup. The truth is out there.
Yes, it's a political agenda. I just don't think there's a significant political constituency for it, and perhaps the Biden administration will learn this the hard way. I can just say anecdotally, I have two trans women friends, and their view is that this sort of radical agenda of trans women competing in biological women's sports actually undermines their goals to live their lives and to deal with their gender dysphoria, however they characterize that. So I don't think it's good for the cause of trans people being treated with dignity and respect. It actually undermines.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally right. Because we can treat people with dignity, respect, equality, and people argue this is erasing. My view, the view of this brand XXXY is erasing, trans people and trans athletes. It's not. We can have a separate category. We can have a third open category. You can compete in the category of your biological sex. No one's saying anyone shouldn't be allowed to compete. But like I said, women and girls deserve a fair and safe, it's not even safe, a fair, safe, even playing field, an equal chance to compete and to win. And I think that's right. But Matt, as you know, the very loud and vocal and bullying minority grabs the mic. And the longer people who see the absurdity, and that's 80% of Americans, at least according to the most recent Gallup poll, as long as we cower in fear and allow this sort of bullying minority to tell us to sit down and shut up, they will get it their way. And so what we're hoping to do with the brand, because you're right, most people agree, but you wouldn't know that from, the mainstream press. You wouldn't know that, I would say, even in kind of blue states in terms of the laws that are currently being passed. So it requires the majority to stand up. And it is a majority across parties. This is not just a sort of a red state, ultra MAGA belief that women and girls deserve fairness. But we need everybody to stand up. And I just hope that with this brand, we can kind of normalize standing up and saying this very true and obvious thing, which most people already agree with us on, because they're not doing it now. So many women I know are talking about it to their friends, but they're afraid to say it publicly. And so we're just trying to offer a little encouragement there. They won't stand alone if they say it at their daughter's soccer game this weekend.
Yeah, and this gets into the sort of the lifestyle brand of what you're trying to achieve. But I would just notice, and it's probably not an accident, that you rose to fame or infamy, asking very obvious questions about the damage that school lockdowns would do to children. I got to believe that everybody except for the really loud, obnoxious people probably knew that was true. It was just, it wasn't rocket science. It was common sense. And it's only now, like years later, that it's safe to actually say the things that you were saying. And at some point, it's going to, and maybe this is good or bad, but at some point, people are going to feel comfortable saying out loud, yeah, we knew that all along, and we never should have done that. But
I think that's right. I mean, you're right. The headlines now, even in the New York Times, are all about the startling learning loss, which to me is not so startling, and nor to you, I think. Just recently, I think a couple of days ago, there was an article in the New York Times with I don't remember the exact headline, but it was about the chronic absenteeism having doubled since school closures, which to me is not at all surprising. And I was sort of shouting this from the rooftop during the closures, because here's what we did. We put kids' needs last. We told them they matter least. We told them their education is not a societal priority. So guess what? They heard us, and now they're not going back. They developed bad habits, and we sent a strong signal, like I said, that, you know what, school's just not that important. Long after stadiums were opened and adults could attend, football games with 60,000 people, kids were kept out of school, and 2-year-old toddlers were masked. So we sent a very clear message, not me and you, but the culture. The kids really didn't rank in our priorities, and they heard us. And it's not surprising to me that you have close to 30% of public school students who are chronically absent, which means they're not learning what they need to learn. It means many will not graduate. It means they won't have the skills to go into the world and get a job. This is a generational problem, which is something I said would happen from the very beginning as well.
So in some ways, you're ahead of the curve this time, because you're not just yelling within the walls of a tone-deaf corporate culture at Levi's about this damage, which is an unfair characterization because you were public about it as well. But this time you're like, you know what, let's get upstream, let's get into culture, and let's make it safe for dads and moms and anybody that wants to speak the truth with this new brand. And you have some experience doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I learned from the best. I worked at Levi's for 23 years. It's one of the most beloved brands in the world. Learned from the best the first 10 years I was there, and I took on chief marketing officer role for 8 years and helped bring that brand back from near bankruptcy, and really put it on a positive path going forward. I love building brands. I love the way that with really amazing product and really amazing marketing content to support a brand with a distinctive message, you can kind of intersect with culture in a really meaningful and relevant way. And I think, brands are a tool of culture, just like music, just like movies. They seed ideas in the culture. Examples I always cite are, and you may think this is good, you may think this is bad, but I'll just throw it out there. Dove, with their Real Beauty campaign, when it first launched, which was probably about 10 years ago, really sort of put body positivity in the mainstream. Now, that idea has kind of jumped the shark and kind of gone to really weird, crazy places. But in the beginning, I think it was really positive. And for someone like me who had suffered from an eating disorder as a child, to see, real women, healthy bodies, not anorexic, but also not morbidly obese, that was really sort of meaningful. And this was an idea that was in the culture, but I think Dove, with media weight and really beautiful advertising, furthered it. Nike really made us all believe if you have a body, you're an athlete, and mainstreamed fitness and exercise in the culture, which arguably we need more of now. So I think as I spent the last 2 years figuring out what I was going to do next, and I interviewed with a bunch of established companies, I came to realize I didn't want that. I didn't want to, have to watch my words and be afraid all the time, that I might say something wrong. I wanted to create my own culture where open debate and dissent begets innovation and creativity. And, I had one experience in the last 2 years where I was interviewing at a very large retail brand, well over $8 billion. So big brand, CEO job. I was excited about it because, I've been a company gal. I didn't have a problem working in an established company. I never really wanted to start my own thing. But I went through about 10 interviews. The first 9 were great, all about my expertise and experience. And the last one was with the HR member of the board. And she just basically led the interview with, "Do you regret your actions?" Not very specific, but I knew what she meant. And I just said, no, because at this point it was already obvious and beginning to be okay to say that school closures were devastatingly harmful to children. So it was like a light bulb, and I thought, I don't think I can go back to that. Not to mention, I just was tired of people telling me, you're doing it wrong, you're talking too fast, you care too much, you're too values-led, you're too this, you're too that, you don't understand women, which, yes, I thought sometimes. And I thought, I know how to do this. I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to try to do it my way. And it just feels like the culmination of my entire life. My background as an athlete, my experience as a brand builder, and my willingness to say unpopular things that also happen to be true. It just felt like kismet.
At Kibbe on Liberty, freedom is a lifestyle 24/7, something you live and breathe and wear every day. If that describes you, you need the very best Liberty swag in the market today. Just like this shirt I happen to be wearing. Go to freethepeople.org/KOL and check out our exciting merch. You too can love Liberty and look cool.
So you could think about this brand. I've heard some people, and I listened to some other conversations you had. Someone characterized this as part of the parallel economy where conservatives are sort of opting out of woke brands. Some people could argue that it's sort of an ideological thing, and it has sort of a conservative vibe now because it's now conservative to say that women are women. But it strikes me as sort of an entrepreneurial opportunity to serve a market that's underserved, underappreciated, neglected, a market that believes in both strong women and strong men. Again, these shouldn't be radical concepts, but apparently they are. So that to me is just a market opportunity. It's not an ideological statement.
Well, I feel like I agree with that. I also feel like it's not ideological because it's true. I mean, it has been politicized, but it's true that the biological sex is binary. Why is that political? I will never understand. 6 years ago, that was fine to say. And I looked around at all the athletic brands, and there's, this category, if I get into the kind of business aspect of it, this athleisure, as they call it, sport, athletic brands, this is the fastest growing category in apparel. In fact, the only growing category some years. And it did explode during COVID because everybody got more casual working from home. But it's a huge market. I think it's a $350 billion market. It's growing 6% a year. which may not sound like a lot, but it is a lot. And there's been a lot of new entries that have had success, brands like Fiore. But I looked around at the biggies, Nike, Lulu, they all claim to champion women. They all do these big Women's History Month campaigns. And none has weighed in on this subject. None has truly stood up for the protection of female athletes. In fact, in many instances, they've done the opposite. And Nike has a long history of mistreating women within the company, history of sexual harassment, which ended up leading to the ousting of their much celebrated CEO, Mark Parker, mistreating and abusing female athletes in their running program, which has now been shuttered because of that abuse. And mistreating their female brand ambassadors. Famously, Allyson Felix wrote a piece in the New York Times about how when she went to renew her contract with Nike, and she was the world champion at the time, she looked to include maternity protections, and they said no and offered her 70% less. And she went and started her own brand. So good for her. So this is, a company that likes to wave their arms around about how much they champion women, but in real life, they treat them with astonishing disregard. So I don't think it's ideological because it's true. I think there's tons of opportunity for an athletic brand that actually stands up for women and speaks the truth. And I also reject this term parallel economy, to come back to your question, or at least I reject it for me and for XXXY Athletics. None of us should accept being part of this parallel economy. It's like being put in a corner. Make product that's good enough that you're part of the mainstream economy. It's only then that we'll be able to really, really compete. And that's the thing. It's not just a catchy message and a catchy name. We're really striving to make best-in-class product, because a lot of these brands I see popping up in the parallel economy, it's like they want to harness this opportunity, but they haven't put the time in, and they don't necessarily have the expertise to make world-class products. And that's what we're aiming to do. And if we can do that, we won't be relegated to the sort of second track.
Talk about the products. I've yet to see one. I know Terry's. I hold this against you, but Terry's already been online buying stuff. But tell me about the products and production. And I know you have the current rollout, but you have other things in the pipeline.
Yeah, we do. We wanted to get out there quickly. I mean, it should be noted that for most clothing brands, the go-to-market is 12 to 13 months long, from when you design or conceive of a product to get it to market. And for a new brand where you don't have an established supply chain or anything like that, it can take even longer. But we felt like this was the moment. So we went really fast and worked really hard to get out a first drop, which is just cotton product. So it's more sort of casual athletic wear, like this fleece I'm wearing. There's joggers, there's T-shirts, there's graphic tees, which are doing really, really well. We've got socks, we've got caps, we've got water bottles. But there's another drop coming very soon of what I would call our performance-oriented products. So that's when you get into performance fabrics that are truly made for working out. Leggings, bike shorts, tanks and tees, shorts for him. So that's, in probably, where are we? We're in early April. So we're hoping mid-May. That's all in the pipeline right now. It's all designed. It's about to move into production, but performance product coming soon. So this first drop is cotton though, and it's all manufactured in Peru, which is known for having the world's best cotton. Very soft, very durable, resists pilling. The little bumps that your clothes can get in the wash when it's not made very well. We're not here to do fast fashion. There's no chemicals. There's no phthalates. We have the highest production standards. Our designer, Krista Wisco, designed for children for a very long time, about a decade, and children's clothes have very rigorous standards. We're using those same standards for our men's and women's clothing.
Thank you for joining me today on Kibbe on Liberty and for being part of our fiercely independent audience. Every week, my organization, Free the People, partners with BlazeTV to bring you this show. My guests bring smart perspectives on everything from current events to timeless philosophical debates. If you like what you hear, go to freethepeople.org/KOL and support Kibbe on Liberty so we can continue to produce these honest conversations with interesting people. Now, let's get back to it.
So do you run into any sort of woke culture stuff up the supply chain where people are just producing stuff? Have you gotten any pushback on that end?
We have not in the supply chain. I will say that was my biggest concern, just as far as staffing. As I sat down with my co-founder and investor, I said he was super excited about the idea. I said the hardest thing is going to be to find people who will come work with me. One, because I am who I am, and there's people that don't want to be associated with me. But secondarily, because of the message, and this industry, fashion in particular, is very left-leaning. And while I know a lot of designers and marketers that were athletes and do agree with us on this subject, they'll be too afraid to say so, and they'll be afraid that they won't ever get another job. I'm glad to say that was not the problem. We've been able to staff with some really incredible people, most of whom are in Denver, which is where I live. But a few in other places. Our creative lead is from Nashville, and our e-com lead lives in Pennsylvania. But we have had no supply chain issues. I was sort of worried about other partners. Like I thought, maybe Shopify will, I don't want to say it and make it come true, but maybe they'll kick us off. But we've had no pushback. There's only been one area where we've gotten a cancellation. We were about to shoot the product photography in Nashville with a really amazing production company. We booked models. And at the very last minute, the modeling agency, just a few days before, said, "We're sorry, we can't actually do this." So that was the one. And we hustled and we found people, friends, neighbors, some models that were willing to kind of do it on their own. And we've been transparent, Matt, because I said to my whole team, we can't have them show up on the set and then leave. They need to know. The photographer needs to know. The models need to know. And they have to be okay. They have to be excited about participating in this. So modeling agency said no at the last minute, took their models with them, but we recovered and found amazing models anyway. That's the only experience I've had so far. I expect more to come.
Yeah, we do the same thing. We're very upfront about what we do at Free the People if we're engaging actors and other talent
right
on a shoot. I don't want any surprises, and I want them to know what they're getting into, because it doesn't help us if we create trouble for people. But it gets to your broader point about I'm using lifestyle brand. I'm not sure that's the language you would use, but if people that feel passionately about something will wear it on their shirt that they purchased from your thing, then other people who want to say that, or at least want to take that job where it might be controversial amongst their woke colleagues, you make it safer and safer for people to say things like, I'm proud to be a girl dad.
Right.
Which again, very radical statement. I can't believe you put that on a shirt.
Yeah, I did get a few comments that we weren't radical enough. So that's been some of the criticism. But we're just trying to be truthful, and bring people along. And as you articulated very well, make it okay to say very true things that should not in any world be controversial, but they are. And unfortunately, it requires a degree of bravery to stand up for your daughter right now. And that's just crazy. And I do think we can normalize it. And I would call it a lifestyle brand. I mean, lifestyle, I don't love that term. I think it's overused. But it's lifestyle in as much as we stand for something bigger than what we make.
So tell me about some of your ambassadors. I don't know what the right language is, but you have some very outspoken people, including very accomplished female athletes. Tell me about these partnerships and what their role is in the company.
Yeah, well, we are working with Riley Gaines, who really is the face of this movement. She was a swimmer, for those who don't know, at the, I think University of Kentucky, am I guessing right? I'd hate to get that wrong. But she famously tied with trans swimmer Leah Thomas at the 2022 NCAA finals, and was told by the NCAA officials that she needed to stand down and let Leah Thomas accept the trophy. on, on the medal stand. And she did so at the time and has since become very outspoken in leading a movement for fairness within women's sports, both within the NCAA, but also the Olympic movement, which is a whole separate governing body. There's a lot of complexity here in terms of how many governing bodies need to get on board. But I think once one falls, the others will not falls. But once one gets on board with fairness, I think the others will fall in line. At this point, the NCAA says they're just following what the USOC does. So we really need the U.S. Olympic Committee and all their sort of individual sport governing bodies to get on board with this, and they have not yet. So Riley is one, and I think, the NCAA basically said this woke photo op matters more than actual women who have trained their entire lives for this moment, which is sort of devastating to me, knowing how hard she must have worked, and she's just been such an outstanding champion for this cause. So she was a no-brainer. We needed her. We're also working with Paula Scanlon, who was a swimmer at the University of Pennsylvania, and she was on the team with Leah Thomas. And Paula has also been really outspoken. She specifically speaks out about privacy and women's spaces. She was very concerned and uncomfortable sharing a locker room with Leah Thomas, and she went to the university and said, as a victim of sexual assault, as a teenager, she was 16 when she was assaulted, I am not comfortable. Not that you should have to even, use that. You should just be able to say, my privacy matters. But she was told by the university, you need to seek counseling if you're not comfortable with this. So Paula was a no-brainer because, we believe in protecting women's sports, but also spaces and privacy. And she's been a great champion there. She was threatened by the university. She was told, if you speak out on this, you'll never get a job. I mean, this is a young woman. She didn't know. It took her a while to gather the courage, and now she's been incredibly fierce on the subject. And we have 3 other ambassadors that we work with who their causes are sort of less related to this particular subject, because we also want to put a stake in the ground around this broader issue of speaking inconvenient truths. So Adam Coleman is our sole guy ambassador, and he's been outspoken about all sorts of things, DEI, et cetera. Dr. Tabia Lee, who is a DEI practitioner who does it a little bit different and was basically fired for that from the California State University system. And Chloe Cole, who is a noted and I think quite famous detransitioner. She's a very young woman. I think she's only 20 years old. She was surgically transitioned in her teens, and then just a few years later realized that was a grave mistake, and has been very outspoken on the medicalization of confused children and teens.
So you want to be compete with the big guys. You want to be in the mainstream, but I wonder if having frankly all of them would be considered controversial in some the places where the fancy people gather, right? Like the elites and the people that obviously think deeper thoughts than we do.
Obviously.
Is the controversy part of the marketing strategy? Because it strikes me that pissing people off is a great way to get attention, and attention for a new brand is not always a bad thing.
I mean, I didn't think of it that way. I guess I piss people off too. So, there's that. I think there are a lot of people who appreciate what these folks are saying and the clarity and simplicity with which they say it, and the courage it takes to do it, and the persistence in the face of so much criticism. And so I just chose people I respect for their bravery and their courage and their truthfulness. I didn't really think about wanting to kick up controversy. I knew the concept alone would do that. I knew just me alone would do that. So I wanted to select folks who would be proud to wear the brand, who would be proud to stand up for truth, who wouldn't be deterred by being called names because they've been through it all already, and who would look great in the product. So I don't know. I didn't think about the controversy. I suppose you're right, but I stand by the fact I know this is a controversial message, but it shouldn't be, and we can only normalize it by saying it over and over again.
So you've been on the market less than 2 weeks, over 2 weeks by the time we run this show, and you're already sold out of some stuff. It's been a good launch.
Yeah, we've had a really, really strong launch. We had some great pieces run in Forbes and WWD, which is sort of the most important fashion trade pub in the United States. So, these are not controversial publications. I think they wrote really fair overviews of what it is we're trying to do. We've had a strong launch, out of the gate, sold out of quite a few items. We're racing to get back in, but there's plenty in stock and we need to keep it going. So, I hope your listeners will go check it out, get a t-shirt.
I'm more concerned about Terry buying too much stuff, I'll be honest.
Okay.
But, so where do people go?
Well, the simple way to find the site is to go to thetruthfits.com. It's sort of like a vanity URL. We decided that would be easier than saying xx-xyathletics.com. So go to thetruthfits.com and I'll take you right there.
And the shirt that Terry bought actually was Just Say It. And so I love the play on words. And
that's so nice.
I think it should be a motto. I think we should be comfortable saying the truth in a respectful way. Again, this is something that our parents taught us to do, but now if you actually feel like you're in an environment where you can't say true things, you need to step up.
Yeah, you just got to do it. You got to cross that sort of Rubicon and just jump in. The water's cold at first, but you'll meet a lot of nice people and it gets much easier. And I would just argue it doesn't even have to be true. I mean, I'm not saying you stand up and say things are over lies, but ask questions, challenge. Like, these are normal things. We used to believe in a culture of open debate and dissent. I really worry within the business culture and business environment, really, it's a death knell for American innovation if you really have a culture where people are afraid to talk. How do you innovate? How do you collaborate? How do you create? You got to get things wrong first. If everybody's afraid, they're going to say a word that today is banned for some reason, but yesterday was fine. And so they're sort of just sitting there in silence in the corner. We're never going to create amazing stuff. I don't mean in the whole of American industry. We're not going to, that's what begets innovation, that kind of collaboration and open debate and dissent. And so that's the culture we're trying to create. As much as I want to build a brand that resonates, I also want to build a corporate culture that is productive and fun and effective. So, we're trying to do that at the same time. It's no easy task. I know brands fail all the time. I'm really hoping for the support of folks like your listeners who believe in freedom and open debate and free speech and believes that men and women are biologically different, which really isn't something you should have to believe in, is it? It's just true.
Well, probably most importantly, we believe in quality fleece that doesn't ball up after you wash it.
All right. Yeah. This one I've washed many times. There's no pilling. So
okay. What is this one called? Because now everybody's rushing to your website to buy it.
Oh, good. This is the Fearless Fleece Half Zip. I have to say our fleece is incredibly soft and it looks sharp. Like it's mature silhouettes, for grown-ups. It's not like super baggy, but it fits. It's very flattering and it's very soft.
Okay, thank you for squeezing me in. I know you're doing a bunch of this right now, and it's been a busy couple of weeks, but congratulations and good luck.
Thanks, Matt. I hope Terry likes her stuff.
We'll give feedback. We'll be online talking about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you liked the conversation, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and also ring the bell for notifications. And if you want to know more about Free the People, go to freethepeople.org.